난 오늘 저게 다가서 주거리라나 나가지 제름 책이 아주야 랍처를 시간는 거로서네. 근데 저기 대바디 알디고레센 동아디 대바디고레 동아디고 말레스 지사다 대바디고 상한 대비데 엔체텔레디 도에디기다 엔케와 침마디기 대라 안능원도다 살바다 탐지기 먹고 와쳐서 더버 대바 나신지가서 내기위 저게 마 레미电下巴德里呀 근데 저기 아버지님 제는 어떻게 되냐면 제바이나 대바디기 지기 야버도 투그레스 되바나 두그레스지 예자다 디니기 냠솔레나기 림바티 안된 방에 아니 지금 용지에도 나셔서 상하지마 시이스 아니 좋아지 아버지님 로시에스지 어디 쉬어야 것도 디니기 어송교도 마시 쉬로아.
Good afternoon. This morning, we looked at how we all want to be happy. We want to be free of all problems, suffering, and difficulty. And Lama Tsongkhapa presents here that through relying on our spiritual teacher, our virtuous friend, not only can our happiness in this life be enhanced, but we can achieve the happiness of future excellent rebirths. And furthermore, by relying on our spiritual teacher, we can progress towards and eventually attain liberation from the sufferings of samsara, freedom from samsara. And in fact, by relying on our spiritual teacher, we can progress even beyond that to attain the happiness of enlightenment, where we can have the greatest impact on others too. All of this can come about independent on relying on our spiritual teacher. And in this interdependent relationship, Lama Tsongkhapa concluded that verse by saying that he will compose a brief text for us with all the steps we need to train in to radically transform our mind. And from our side, we need to listen well, and apply what he guides to our own mind. The second verse, through extensive wholesome karma, you have successfully achieved this excellent life of freedom. Now that you've gained such a life, if you do not strive in virtue every day and each night, there can be no greater betrayal. Purpose the meaning of this verse is that in order to follow the advice that Lama Tsongkhapa is giving, which is to, in brief, eradicate our mind from the afflictions, to free our mind from the afflictions through cultivating strong, wholesome minds, we need a supreme basis, an excellent rebirth.
And then 저기 미 류된다 류류 류된데가 저기 통과와 다 류조리식 아드는 저기 추나는 네비 류조리 디멘비게다 저기 상하는 네비 류조리가 말아 류데 여러와 다 가신 남의 풀투가 가신 추나는 지투가 가신 산난 지투가 되네게 리 미예레 류조 류된다 미 류된데가 저기 통수수 교바 디니기 나네다 류된디 네 가르야가 요래서는 아주 미류된 류된 직다 말아 예배나는 아주 미류된디다 약쇼를 차려야 해지래. 제자들 가르래람나 아주 미류된 데라 베네드르 데라 거주기 안에 지게 소교야 되었지다. 내가 사야 동야로지 이강아 세야 되지. 얘네 지투를 말해 셴미세게셔라 안지기 류된 데레 남지 베제다네 직쇼가 동아세야다 디기르에 탑람 자시무지 투고 말해서 류된델 류된델라. 나 아주 미 류된델에 임바이나 안에 지게 소수기 and city dunga se dan di youtube ge donda la ang zu ge mi lu den digi and ji ge tablam da mar session go res je de lu tin de la and di mi lu tin de la tin bi ge sam no ti pe ribo no da mar sam no ta tu ge ribo chang bu yo res je de din za ane ko dunga se ya gi donda li ya tablam ane di youtube ya da dunga se tablam da mar ya bo se tu go res je za di ang zu ge dun ju de na都是我说通学是具备，我说通都也给点的什么单位呢？那对点呢，旅店我的米旅店什么单位呢？米旅店的修的开发的爸爸也说了。
There are a wide number of different physical bases or bodies that beings dwell in. So what we're most familiar with is what we abide in this life, that of a human being. But what the other type we can see are those of animals, whether those living in the ocean, those living on the earth, under the earth, or primarily in the sky. All these various types of physical bases that comprise the animal kingdom. What marks them out as being particularly different from human beings is not so much the various physical forms, but their very limited intelligence, to the extent that one can call them quite stupid. Because animals, they can only largely endure problems that they experience, and they can try to seek out sufficient food to eat. But there's not too much more that they can do. And that's not largely due to limitations in their body, but primarily in their mind. Whereas compared to them, human beings, our bodies are quite limited, but our intelligence, this is what makes us stand out as remarkable. As human beings, with this intelligence, we can not only experience and endure suffering, but we can seek out the causes of why we are suffering and try to do something about it, seek methods to eradicate suffering. And it's this intelligence that we have that makes this human rebirth so remarkable.
And the
reason why we have this physical basis, this human rebirth, isn't by luck or by chance, but it came about independent on causes.
Ne gewele da mi gewele sa chi te yung go de de za da ma ju li din de le ka du bo sin gewele le go ne de za da sang pe le ma da ye le tu bi sang pe le sa na gewele de san da nga jo ge gewele le de ne ane chi gewele le de li de du go wo es chi san gewele de gewele ji bu ma ye ba gewele mang bu ane de ne ge cha sa ya bo chi cho ba le de ne ane du go le che sang pe le ma da ge le tu ba ste tu bi.
The physical basis, or the body, the life that beings have, or the body that beings have achieved, comes about in dependence on causes. And causes, or karma, are comprised of two categories: those which are virtuous or wholesome, and those which are non-virtuous or unwholesome. Our particular rebirth, that as a human being, has come about in dependence on wholesome karma or virtuous karma, and not just a small portion, but extensive wholesome karma. In other words, a wide number of excellent causes brought about this particular rebirth that we achieved. So this is the first line, through extensive wholesome karma.
David Tiansa di se de David Tiansa di se de David Tiansa se de ngoti lutin de la David Tian zhuang a de dawa jie de zhuo ju sa bi lutin de la da David Tian lutin se de ne ge lutin di nan ge le mao bo fo sum cho ba la de ne ane zhu bo go les.
So it's through the accumulation of extensive wholesome karma that we have successfully achieved this excellent life of freedom. So this is the first two lines. So this term here, this life of freedom, the two different words translated as freedom. This specific term refers to the freedom of being born as a human being, as opposed to in another realm. So it's it refers to the 8 freedoms, which we have achieved, as well as the accompanying 10 endowments. So these 18 qualities of the freedoms and endowments comprise this precious human rebirth that we all have successfully achieved, independence on extensive, wholesome karma. And of the various rebirths, this rebirth of a precious human rebirth is by far the very best for the purpose of spiritual transformation. Having this precious human rebirth, which comprises these 8 freedoms or leisures and these 10 endowments or opportunities, having this rebirth means we each have the capacity to accumulate causes that will lead to further excellent lives of freedom. Moreover, we have the capacity to cultivate the causes that will lead us to eventually attaining liberation or freedom from samsara in its entirety. And in fact, we have the capacity with this rebirth to accumulate the causes that will eventually lead to full and complete enlightenment. This is the incredible opportunity we have all achieved with this rebirth. To understand that one has achieved a precious human rebirth requires some education in the Dharma. Through the education in the Dharma, does one recognize that one has achieved these 8 freedoms and these 10 endowments. Without that education, it won't be recognized what capacity we have, this capacity to achieve freedom or liberation. So therefore, it cannot be said that every human being has a rebirth that can be considered in this context, that can be considered precious. What marks out a precious human rebirth is that someone has these qualities and has recognized that they have these qualities, because it's then that they have the capacity to live a truly meaningful life. Some of the qualities that are required for a rebirth to be a fully fledged precious human rebirth include that the Buddha has appeared in our world and taught the Dharma, and that Dharma still abides in the world today. It abides in the continuum of realized practitioners. And not merely that it abides somewhere in the world, but it abides where we are. In other words, that we can engage in the teachings. We have the opportunity to engage in the teachings. There's a place we can go to, a teacher we can receive teachings from. And then furthermore, that we ourselves have the individual capacity to understand and comprehend those teachings and train our mind in them. So we do not suffer from some severe mental impediments. We don't suffer from some severe physical impediments that would prevent us from engaging in the teachings.
Lama
and further, that one does not, one's mind is not deluded by severe wrong views that prevent one from engaging in the teachings. One would otherwise see the teachings as being faulty. So having the freedom of such wrong views, as well as being of a sound human body and mind, as well as being in an area where one has access to a qualified teacher as well as the teachings, then one has a precious human rebirth. There'll be many of our fellow human beings who are living in a place in this world where, whilst they have a fully qualified human body and mind, they live in a place where the teachings just do not exist. There are no qualified teachers, and therefore they have no access to the teachings. And there are others who may be very close to a place where the Dharma abides, but they have particular wrong views, which means they reject the Dharma. For example, they don't accept that something like Buddhahood is possible, and so forth. So they, whilst living in a place where the Dharma is accessible for them as an individual, it is not. Or for others, again, they may be living in a place where the Dharma is entirely available, but they have a severe physical or mental impediment to engaging in the Dharma. So those for whom they have all 18 characteristics, they have a fully fledged precious human rebirth. They are of great fortune, they have the capacity to radically transform the spiritual projection of themselves for lives to come. The great importance of this reflection is to come to recognize just how fortunate we are. Because we take all these good qualities that come with this particular life we have, we tend to take it for granted, seeing it as ordinary or commonplace, assuming we've had it before and we'll have it again. But rather, by engaging well in this reflection, we come to recognize how rare what we have achieved is in our world. And thereby, we develop a determination to use this life well, to not let it go to waste. If you, in your home, you have perhaps an ornament or some jewelry that's really quite expensive, you will put it somewhere secure, especially if you have young kids, because a young child will not recognize the value of this ornament or this jewelry, and the child will just see it as something to play with, and perhaps lose it or break it. So because you as the adult have recognized that this is something of value, you'll put it away and take good care of it. Wow. So too, with this precious human rebirth, if one takes it for granted, sees it as something ordinary or commonplace, one is like that young child. One doesn't put to use what has such value, such potential. But when one reflects well and sees just how difficult it was to achieve this rebirth, the causes that were required, and how rare it is in our world, then we'll value what we have and we'll not let it go to waste. We'll see this as an opportunity that has great value, and we'll want to use this, what remains of this life, in a meaningful way.
nyamsu lemba le tene tu gore se je sang anjo lutin dene tene gyu ya bo shi le tene tu gore ba je sang dene sen gyu di sangbe le kewe le tene tu gore de an kewe le chi bo ai ba kewe le mangbo le tene tu gore se de je sang anjo du sen na dor du shi we na je sang anjo ge mi lu to ye gyu di are se ne surim se de surim so ya de she da surim se de ga ne chi le se ne odan ge lu ma yu su mi ba ne shan la ne ba chi me semja so shu gi ja wa chi me san bi ge da semje mida dunro da kadena semje ri chaza so je be sa da zaw yi chi me sa da samlo da ya xian yu jia la la su gu mo gu me sam me sam da ran de xian ren ne bi ge jawa sa zaw yi chi me sam bi samlo di de churim ne go di ne samlo de ge di na ga je da tu bi ne shuk che ma ga je da tu bi be je ga da tu ne di ga je ge ge wa chi ma wen de ko ba mi lu to ya da li yu ta we wen de ko ba de bi ge di de so da
in the very first line, it says, extensive wholesome karma was required for this excellent life of freedom. So there are many causes that are required to have this life that we've each achieved. All of those causes are on the side of wholesome karma or virtuous karma. But to look at those causes in brief, in order to attain rebirth as a human being, the cause is ethics, ethical restraint. Recognizing that that is the cause that leads to rebirth as a human being, one commits to training one's mind in being ethical so as to cultivate further causes. And one develops a determination. For example, I will not harm others through killing or through stealing. I will not do or even say anything that brings harm to others. And one develops this determination so that it becomes deep within, so that the very thought of saying or acting in a way that would bring harm to someone seems repulsive to one. And this thought we develop ever more deeply within us, so it becomes ingrained and part of who we are. And this is how we experience the cultivation of the causes of ethical restraint. Furthermore, in addition to cultivating the cause of ethical restraint, which leads to the rebirth as a human being, one requires further causes, and a further cause is that of generosity. So generosity, the cultivation of the cause of generosity ensures that in one's future rebirths, one has favorable circumstances, one has an abundance. So, for example, it's born as a human being to have an abundance of material comfort so that one is freed from a life of struggle and poverty, and one is thereby materially well off. So here one needs to cultivate the cause of generosity, developing a mind that wants to give of oneself to others.
먼저 이제 최대다 고다 되게 잠려야 아니 지금 소수기 밸6 최비 삼다지 시에니보다다 아니 지구다 자니보디게 표현네 개와치마이네 제야고야다 인구레제 아니 지고야 산지 고다 아티네 산지 고리 남세 표현다 베지리아 베 남세 표현 아니 산지 고다 되게 최내라 시레세라 두스 표현네 제수기 개와치마게 소수 빼지 인조다 야고 남세 표현 되게 소소야 두로다 되게 야고 여라야 아니 지게 남세 변의 셰르 변의 최대한 다 고다 되게 셰세 표현다 되게 되게 소수기 소보를 괜찮다 소수기 도다 되면 인조 차야 아니 지게 지구다 되게 잔인지 마음번에 깨야고다 되게 미끼냐고 신나 미끼야고 되게 미망고 쉬울 거 없어 두고 와 아니 미기 수분이 줘야 미망고 거 없어 두고 와 이제
주카트베니 담아
예세 지구다 되게 잠년이 지고 쇼체 스피초 표현나 지수기 깨야고 그래서 되는 게 유사고 그래서 되게 최고 자마 리코롱롱이 디바비기 제부 제가 한테 타마라 지금 연구를 가서 디다디 시에토야메데 연구 제가 되네서 쳐서 지수 진바세디 세기 진바 고기 진바 아니 추유 진바 아니 매기 진바 아니 세소수기 시행기 진바 진비지 타마 장아제레 시행에 판도비기 야라마당 권조당 시행 셈젤이야 판도비기 가래 직소수기 토네 튕게 줘디 진바차고 그래서 디 되네서 디시 데네기 체원 부변나 마음바나 소수기 원조 고방 밀리 톱디베 딘델야 소수고에 튕긴디게다 야부투투고 용거를 해제돼.
So in the practice of generosity, what one is doing is primarily developing a mind wanting to give. And under the influence of that mind, then one will do so. So one can, in meditation, imagine giving, and then from this motivation, the wish to physically give will also follow. So most commonly, one will make offerings to the three jewels, offering flowers, incense, and so forth. And in particular, when the motivation is good, but certainly too when the motivation is weak, extensive merit is accumulated. So therefore, it's very common in the text describe making offerings to the images of the Buddhas and to stupas and so forth. And the very word for stupa means basis of offering, because its very purpose is to enable people to accumulate merit there. So through the making offerings of various substances, one accumulates differing causes that will lead to desired results or beneficial results in life to come. So the texts talk of, or give illustrations of, if one offers music to a stupa or a statue, or praise, this then leads to having an attractive or beautiful voice in the future. And offering incense and clothing leads to having an attractive physique. And so therefore, by making offerings such as these to stupas and statues, but doing so with a good mind, creates excellent virtue that will lead to good results, desired results in lives to come. But what one gives or can give is very diverse. So one, as mentioned, can offer music, can offer incense and flowers and clothing and so forth. But one can also offer education, or education in the sense of sharing whatever knowledge you have with those who require that knowledge, or whatever skills you have, helping others to develop those skills, giving advice to those in need. If you have a Dharma education, sharing the Dharma with others. So this practice of generosity is looking at whatever one has in abundance, whatever skills and talents one has, and utilizing this with an attitude of wanting to give of oneself to others. In this way, one creates causes to have an abundance oneself in lives to come.
And the negi that milieu to tunge ya wo changwa ne that den de le ya je wong bo ya wo yong ya da wong bo chang ya da and me ji ge si de den ba le si le ne ni bo chen bo si la la mi si chen bo ne wo mi ji o de zi hu chen然后me zi hu chen li yo lo wa just si de den ba de negi and ni do da den ba and shui tong na ga lang la ji ge wa ya de ma che de le sui bi nian de ji wa he che sui bi nian de ji bu di mo 그래서随便你们说的가르스나 that 신행기 소설이야 강아 녀버를 기변에 파 코로 말아봐지 파 코로 말아봐 수는 틀려 시네 아니 중간에 대해서 어다 콜이야 잠바도 니지 검토면 이내게 제투반에 다随便你们说的学吧是的出讲这个别的新教这个就的几个学习呢差不多呢也搞图我们学图我们前面个搞图你那些초 견지신 남사 팔을 견지 요 코로나 팔을 내가 예 견지 삼단 수업 검투 수업하고 검투고 말 진짜 수업 검라도 초 견지 제다 세 맞고 봐지 소스 파 녀지에 삼는 견지 막고 봐지 요새는 대투번에 수업 하죠 진짜 되는 게 수업 수업네 수업이냐면 제야디 근데 되는 게 녀버지에 참을 파 근데 약부想받아 이제 삼다셔는 또 수업이냐면 시고 되는 게 수업이냐면 제발나 이게 제보되다 공부 상황에서 봐. 아니 미 소수기 마음바다에 미리 개변에 도와다 된바다 되는 시지대 된바다 연구를 했어. 근데 여배나다 소수기 내가 저기 현전주의에 튕긴 채워. 튕긴 현전주의에 파도시 소수기 냠내 제다 약을 못 두고
The third cause required to have excellent rebirths. The first was ethics, the second was generosity. Now the third is that of patience. Patience leads to a body where one's physical sense powers are working well. So in other words, we can see and hear and so forth. but also one has a physique which is attractive. And what that means is not mere physical beauty, but where others feel comfortable in your presence. Because part of the result of the cause of patience is that one easily forms friendships with others. People feel very comfortable in your presence. They don't feel on guard in your presence, but are relaxed in your presence. So that's the result that follows from patience. So to understand the mind of patience, we rely on patience whenever in order to overcome anger. So anger should be understood in its broadest sense, from frustration and annoyance all the way up to rage, and arises in varying contexts, not just with other people, but towards ourselves or situations. So that's anger and in all its variety. So this we recognize quite easily. Patience, though, especially how it's understood in Buddhism, is often misunderstood. Patience, like with ethics, like with generosity and all the trainings you'll hear about, refer to a mental attitude. So a patient attitude is a mind that is undisturbed in the face of adversity. Through one's mind being undisturbed, one will not respond in a way that brings disturbance. So, for example, one will not get angry and shout in return or physically fight with someone. But the practice of patience is not just staying silent. It's one's mind staying relaxed and spacious, no matter what one is facing. And when one's mind is relaxed and spacious, wisdom can shine through, and one can respond skillfully. One can respond with love and with compassion and deal with the situation in a skillful manner. That is the practice of patience. And the motivation, ideally, to cultivate the patience, as with generosity and ethics, is recognizing that all these virtuous these desired results will enable one to help others evermore, to be of ever more benefit to others. So if one is experiencing the results of having been patient in the past, and people easily get on with you, one's physique is attractive, the purpose of this is so that one can easily form wholesome, meaningful relationships and be of benefit to others.
Gewachima, Bendigo, that me, dance our military top. Then and then the Tunye Chazan Tsawa, Tunye Chazan Tsawa Yubache, so sugar, the Lu Chane now, on Bachasa Tsawa, then again, Sicily Dema Shubene, that Delia, Churchy beginning ever a Gomara. Just that Chilia, not Churchy, Cobragi, Dundagi, Guti Hachawasan, that they are Zundusum, that they are the Zundusum, the page, Zundusum, Yamlenchi, Churchy, and the Kahan, I said, very Yahores, Mikalan, and Mutinichi, and be some of the Yamlenchi, some of the like Kiwi, Jawalia, Kalama, Chekane, and the bear Yahores, thinking Mutinichi, and somebody that Zundushiore. Indeed, the nigger some Shubana, indeed, like you watch Madilia, so you young church, Cohabra, church, Dunyu Yuba, church, Dunyu Yuba, the church, the Jago, as it is other to some way, the Bishop Chagoresha.
And in addition to ethics, generosity, patience, a fourth indispensable cause in order for one's future lives and future Dharma practice to go well is that of enthusiastic perseverance or joyous perseverance. The result of this is that in future lives, one will have a natural yearning for the Dharma. One will seek it out, even if one is not in an environment where it is all around you, you will seek it out. And to develop enthusiastic perseverance, it comes about through having an enthusiasm towards virtue in general and the Dharma in particular. And so this is the attitude of enthusiasm, and the perseverance is the continuing to engage over an extensive period, not in a haphazard way. So developing this enthusiasm for the Dharma, for virtue in general, as well as perseverance, is creating a cause that in future lives, we will naturally seek out an ethical path, in particular, that of the Dharma.
Adinegi Gigelia Molam Jawrela, Dudus and other Kewa San, Dus Yamlin Chesevichelia, Adagi Kewa Dinamlin Jebal, Din Jebal Kewa Tilatin, Mahobana, and Jige, Givishin, Che, Lamano doing Givishin, that Cheche, Chechi, Yamlin, Tashim, your shores, and Piginigi, and the Molam Jawar Esti, Molam Di Molam said Digi, that Yanzuge, Jike, Lubashanda Chile, Church Mesa, Church, Mesa, such a Kevin. Yama the molam de Nubetoga, the court ranching religion, church as such a chica, giving you set such a little word. So that then is at the molam dedication more actually.
The fifth cause here is that of prayer. So prayer is important, and one makes prayer in relation to, or you can maybe here then express it as dedication, where when one accumulates virtue, dedicating this virtue in a specific way, that in future lives, may I always come under the direct care of a spiritual teacher, in particular, a spiritual teacher who can skillfully guide me to cultivate the complete and unmistaken path within. A spiritual teacher who possesses all the required qualities and who has the skill to guide me perfectly in accordance with my own personality. So making such prayer is important because it will bring about that in our future lives, we are not born far from our teachers. And when we meet our teacher, we connect with them quickly and easily, recognizing this being as being someone special, as being someone to rely on.
On the ding about it, Suchim Dai Sunya, Jimbe Yamleja, Sube Yamazundri Yamleja, Dinian, Jimolam, Molam Jimamia, Molam Jai, ding about tea, Zugi, Dan Jugi Milimus Toyag, Udity Eswa. They shall sit down with Sambu Lema Dagi, Le to be said, Chesa Sambu Le, Deso, Le, Dan Jugi into UTS, Sambu Lema, Sambu Lema Dagi, Le to be David Tian Dirani basis, Chesang Diring Lutendi, David Lute, Sambo Lute Sabo, did our watching out Diring, but did Tobiores, the Toba the Kewangama, the near Sambo Le, Mambo Saba, Teletin Jupiters. That Sambu Le said that it shared it, as the Luma is near to be Tudum Soya, the Chiche, and then Jimbe Yamleja, Sebe Yamleja, Sunday Yamleja, the name Molam Tayadi, Chesa, the Sulatine, Sang Yamazuki. Tajimili Togo, you did it, Tajimili, you did that thing, this night, did it. Chesa, then you know that did Mazuli, Tajimili, Yago, Sambu, Shuchi, didn't Dirania, but the nigger Sambu, Yago didn't nearby it, nearby the Kawangama, the nigger Sambu, Jimba, Jatum, Jimba, Sebocom, then it's on your thumb, then it, and Jimolam Jabba, in area, the Tunkiava, yes, or that.
We see in the second verse, through extensive wholesome karma, you have successfully achieved this excellent life of freedom. So the extensive wholesome karma that in the past lives we accumulated and whose result we are enjoying in this life is precisely these 5 causes I've mentioned now, that in particular of ethical restraint, which led to one being born again as a human being. And then in addition, the causes of generosity, which have led to our material situation, in particular in a country such as this. And then that of patience, so that we have complete sense faculties and that we can easily get on with others. And then fourthly, that of enthusiastic perseverance, where we have a yearning for something more than the material, that we seek some meaning in life. And when we find it, we embrace it. And then finally, that of prayers to have encounters such as these, where we meet the Dharma and the Dharma touches us. So these are the causes that are required for a fully fledged precious human rebirth, an excellent life of freedom with the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments.
Nene Maubana di Ungures, Eza den Disumuda del Ma Ibetida, Minzen Gundu Gela Nabena, dele luba kiwa shankan yus. Jazada insen kundu kela mabe nas. Dada dinigi din la oshu tutu din keba jangan ludin de nye de yue de yeres. Jazan ludin del ya kewa chima da kewa dadi nashin kewa chima ge din del ya. Ani chigi wondio koban mili wondio koban top din del tunye chasan cawa. Ani chigi wongbo cawa. Ani siji de denba. Ani chuanyam de je ko hop chasan denju ludin dinigi top guyo radi che del ya. Ani dadi din de ko hop yubi din del ya. Ani besushi nyamne che ko yes benanga jugi nyingo nyamne che ko bre nyingo samda ene ani chendi wa samda do se yinda chen ge di na do shin samda ji do shin da de ji dang wen yo ko ma to ye yu zam samda ina de ne ge de ji ma de shin ba da churim so se ba chun zum ya ani mo lam ja de ge do shin samda yin sen kun do mi do shin be ji samda ko ye che yin sen kun do be ke la ma be na 되게 마비 되게 배수 맞아 봐냐면 맞아 봐있나 문제 거 봐도 두 말에서 제가 되게 제고를 해서
So understanding what we each have done in order to have such an excellent life of freedom, the verse continues. Now that you have gained such a life, if you do not strive in virtue every day and each night. So here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, look at what you've achieved. It didn't come about easily. It came about independence on great effort that you made in lives previous to this. So now recognizing that you are experiencing the results of the causes you created in the past, do so again. Do so again. Accumulate the causes of ethics, generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, and make prayer so that your future lives continue to go as well as this life is. In other words, so that you continue to have ongoing opportunities for spiritual development in lives to come. So Lama Tsongkhapa is advising us that we must strive each and every day and night to accumulate virtue. To accumulate virtue meaning to cultivate an ethical mind, a generous attitude, a patient outlook, as well as enthusiasm for such virtue. So this is what we're being encouraged to engage in repeatedly, because if we don't, then this precious opportunity that this life presents will be wasted, and we will not achieve an opportunity like this again.
재산 대바 탐지에 시도다 대바 탐지 체디 되기다 개와 주몽 원료 고바 탈바도 탐지기 몇고 토액이 탐지 살 남든 제바 하신 냠는 제바 있나 아니 되게 레라버친 투투그레스라로 제자다 델이야 냠는 제바 나진 제고레스 제델 투투그레스야 돼 제자다 인생 군도 개와 마베나 제자 인생 군도 배수 시고레 냠는 지 도시 배수 존재시 배수 시고레 해서 디네 제바 있나 되지 근데 개와 주몽 원료 고바 양고 투투그레스야죠 안디 나시 나den가 저 땡텔이야 이니게 루틴 차사 대위 땡 상부 고급 차사 유디게 그가 텔이야 예배도 유배 텔이야 딱 먼저 좀 많이 받아 탈비 고반 토야래 코에 두마 타다를 주제 탈비 고바 토야지 냠내 제베나 세텔이야 네 도시 냠내네 제고고래 제자디야 인상고도 냠슬링고래서 알랑냠슬링고래서 제자디 냠슬래야데 가르선 대시 신나디 이 진바 수dim저 진바 수dim서버 준주 예 받지 다 디강라 냠내지 디강라 가르쳐 오르스니 삼대 띵이 있어 신의 주야들에 아니 신의 주네디네 다음에 봐또 다음에 세도 또 비셔럽디 셔럽게지 디고메들 디니다 같이 디니 고메들 제자 다 공로들 가서 코르에 동화데 코르에 동화들 직바한 탑민도 제자 코르에 동화를 타고도 선배 강한 탐제를 줘고도 선배 삼로 다지 대주에 탑람라야 아니 냠는 지인 삼제 나 냠는 제에 가서는 진바 수주 저버 준주시 안디가라 신의 줍 다음에 띵에선 줍 띵에 신의 줍 띵에 신의 띵 줍내데 동반이 다음에 봐또 배 셔럽 계신 내 다음에 봐또 배 셔럽 미비 실라 송들 줍제 띵냠는 제월 띵냠는 제바이나 세델이야 제나 제투을 때도 고급이 대상버 띵시 제가 되니게 냠는 제디 인생군도 이나 이고버도 이고 생고버도 생고 인생고도 배수에 지는 꼼 냠는 제바이나 얘네 ane tarbe ko ba top tugures jisna dine ko yubi te kaptelia nyamne maje ba na susure ko chimbre ko je ores nizen ko to kela mabe se di chik cha go mabe na se di chik jisna nizen ko to kela bese bene 문도 고마 투위치도 귤렉 배주시 고미야 인 탈비 고마 투위치 배주시 고미야 어디시
Let's look at a bit of the first verse together with what we're looking at here in the second verse. So in the first verse, it says, your every wish will be bestowed with ease. Your every wish refers to ongoing excellent rebirths, like we've achieved now, but in lives to come. That those wishes can be fulfilled now that we recognize that we have achieved this excellent life of freedom. But not only that wish, but also the wishes to attain liberation and enlightenment. These too can be attained on independence on this excellent life of freedom. So therefore, recognizing this, we should strive every day and each night in the cultivation of virtue. And the virtue refers to those four primary causes of ethics, generosity, patience, and joyous perseverance. These are indispensable to have ongoing excellent rebirths. They are also indispensable to progress towards liberation and enlightenment. For them to become causes that lead to liberation and enlightenment, one requires a stronger motivation, a motivation of definite emergence, a motivation where one has come to recognize that cyclic existence or samsara itself is an abode of suffering, that there is no pleasure that's worthwhile, happiness that's worthwhile that can be found within samsara, and thereby one gives rise to a wish for freedom. Then with this mind of definite emergence, where one is definite about wanting to emerge from the suffering of samsara, or renunciation, where one wants to renounce the sufferings of samsara, then cultivating ethics, generosity, patience, and joyous perseverance become causes for liberation. And in addition then, when one's heart is set on attaining liberation from suffering, one requires two further causes. And these further causes are firstly, a powerful concentrated mind, a mind that is able to meditate without distraction for as long as one wishes, penetrating each topic deeply. And the topic one in particular will need to penetrate deeply is the sixth cause. Concentration was the fifth. The sixth cause is that of the wisdom realizing selflessness, or the wisdom realizing emptiness. So for those who want to gain liberation from samsara, they have to strive to accumulate virtue every day and each night. It is indispensable to have one's mind committed to cultivating virtue in order to achieve those lofty goals.
Bendigo 냠네 제 투역의 덴주비 고급 유디 값들어야 냠네데 제고래 인생권도 안되지 니 냠네 제다 체념 이제고도 무디지 배제 냠네 제고래 해서 나도나라 냠네 제데 다 심지어 탐지 산요고만 투비 치도 냠네 제디 군노디 심지어 탐지기 된다 산요고만 투버 쇼스비게 근데 심지어 탐지를 미비게 근데 잠바콤 심지어 탐지 대화데 대나 심비 잠바콤이야 심지어 탐제 랑지 보면 심지어 탐제 동안에 저 우도 심비게 되네게 삼다 디인자는 심지어 탐제기 되다 산유고만 토벌 지긴 심비 군노티시 다디 자주 심비 군냐 나와서 디 군노나제 냠내제 대지지 봐다 진배 추림 써야 돼 진배 냠내제 수배 냠내 전류 냠내제 되네 삼대 등에제 신의 두야 돼 되네 다음에 또 동의도 비셔라 보면 되래 지사티 검내 자주 심비 시행을 패션 바시 삼단의 심지어 탐제 코의 동안을 저고도 심지어 탐제 코의 동안을 산예선을 거기 예장의 심지어 탐지 되는 산유고바 토벌치기 세비군이라 제군이라 디군이라 위에 산유고바 토비 철도 위다另外是有个现在那个几个面是孙松呀 제법 보면 전혀 전에 진행념의 제 다음에 부터 신내다 다음에 또 시를 념의 제 뒤치고 제선 이 념의 제디 아주 垫데라 념의 신의 제투여 고급 요래 디진 고급 유비 垫데라야 아니 이게 예다 제 무죄진 념의 제 배주신 념의 제오리에서 오다 인생부도 개라 배세.
In the first verse, when we're talking about every wish, mentioned that there are 3 wishes. There's the wish for ongoing excellent rebirths, and now it's been mentioned that those require 4 indispensable causes. Second wish is that for liberation from samsara in its entirety, that the attainment of that requires a different motivation, a motivation of definite emergence. And then with such a motivation, those same 4 causes, but with concentration and wisdom included, now become causes that will lead to liberation. But there was a third wish referred to in the first verse, and that is to attain Buddhahood, to attain full and complete enlightenment. To attain enlightenment requires those same causes, the 4 that are required, the 4 of ethics, generosity, patience, and joyous perseverance, as well as those additional 2 of concentration and the wisdom realizing selflessness. So those same causes are required in order to become a Buddha, but the motivation needs to be developed further. So these motivations come about sequentially. So having generated definite emergence, there's the determination for oneself to gain freedom from samsara. Having developed that, one lifts one's gaze from one's own suffering here in samsara and recognizes that all those around you, everyone around you, is suffering in the same way. Recognizing that they too are bound in these suffering realms for the same reason as you, and they, like you, yearn to be free. So here, one adds to one's motivation, developing compassion for others, wanting them to be freed of suffering and freed of the causes of suffering. And one cultivates love, wanting them to abide in lasting happiness. One develops this love and compassion further to the point where it arises as bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is the indispensable motivation that is required to become a Buddha. Bodhicitta has 2 key aspects. The wish, or where one takes responsibility oneself to guide beings to gain a state freed of suffering. That's the fulfillment of the wish of compassion, and to attain a state of lasting happiness. That's the fulfillment of the mind of love. And in order to do so now, the second aspect of bodhicitta, one recognizes that one has to become the most skilled of guides, a Buddha. So here one commits to becoming a Buddha in order to lead all beings to a state freed of suffering. This then is the motivation of a bodhisattva. This practitioner now is committed of becoming a Buddha for the sake of others. With this motivation of bodhicitta, they engage in those same 6 practices, those practices of generosity, of ethics, generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration, and wisdom, but now conjoined with the love and compassion of bodhicitta.
dele haba chi yo manes chesa da be ma si gyong che bo da go ho shi u ten so so gyong ji u ra go res chesa dene za di ma che ben be ha zu da di tin tele ya dene ge mon yo ko ba to ye gyu cha za nem ne ji ji tu ye yo ba de dene ma che dene ane ji ge tal byo go ma to ye gyu nem ne ji tu ye yo ba de di ma che di sim je ta sa yo ko ba to bi ge chesa nem ne ji tu bo yo ba de tin sang bu din top de ba de le dene go ho bi yu ka la ma che ba ina dene so so su ge 지게 하모고와 소소스기 데니기 고급 상보디 레마도바 소소스기다 고급 슈어지 소소스기 소소스 고가다와 나신 고허시 우츠이바 차고레제 델레 뉴버기와 시행가 델레 하비기다 용어야다 안 델레 하비 고거티야지 가요 말에서.
So whichever motivation one has cultivated, whether it's to fulfill the wish for further excellent rebirths, or to fulfill the wish for liberation from samsara, or to fulfill the wish to become a Buddha for the sake of others, whichever motivation one has, one should strive to cultivate those virtuous causes every day and each night. And if one doesn't, there can be, the fourth line of the second verse, there can be no greater betrayal. Because having recognized just the very potential that we all possess, to not fulfill this potential, such a great loss. And we would end up betraying ourselves, deceiving ourselves. This is so sad. We should recognize just what we can achieve and utilize this life in the most meaningful way. Recognize what has value, what has meaning, and put our effort there, put our energy there.
제자다 딜이야 저게 제르미치 알아서리야 가르 못했는 것이네 제가 알아서 리텐데 교수 리텐데 대주기 리텐세야지 레스 제가 대주기 리텐세야디 요 안에 가르를 두고 왔으네 난지 추심 써야다 요가 있으니지도 추를 써야 진배님네지야 수배님네지야 준주님네지야 몰람제 디술레테네 대주기 리텐 토고 그래서 제가 교수 대주기 리텐 다들 톱되어 니마 개왕 아마 내게 개와 두브레스 두베자 세텔레 컨스 대주류데 톱되어 해지래 다디네 사다 디네기 텐델이야 다딘 대주류딘 텐델이야 개와 치망 원디오 고마 토야 냠네지 세디기 디기 동아세야다 디기 두에기 두에네 세텔이야 텐델을 두고래 개와 치망 원디오 고마 토데다 다딘 류딘 나진기 텐 야고 톱델이야 튕기 야고 상아도 두게야 다딘 류딘 델을 두고래 아니 냠네지 두고래 되다 뭐 탈벽고 토야게 코에 둥아 탈라르 땡이 되어 토야게 탈벽고 토야돼야 내제 땡들에 냠내치듯이 두고래 지자다 셈제 디마스 셈제 탐제 코에 둥아를 산지에서 있고 고버 있던다라 수진제 탐제게 되는 산지고 투비치를 냠내체바이나 땡들에 냠내치 두고어다 이네기 니버여 다지 냠내치 두고어래 그래서 니버여래 이네자 향어서 냠내체의 모티비시 아니 제게 배서 순주시 배주시 니미고다 디서를 니미고제 다니데 챙고라 그 고베도 챙고라 인다 챙 게디 고브라나 데니 베주시는 냠는 지역고리에스 데니기 고급 유디급이야 지소소 야고시 유디급이야 소소 유딘 데니 튕게 야고여바도 뭐쳐봐 아무고 와제 역시 낭매신 디제마도 베네 베주 고고시 티고레스 딜레는 아주 경어라야 지다 근데 제 그거 채와 딜레 채와줘요 말다 데니자 데니게 삽삽제데 냠는 지역고리에스 사지 나도
So here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying to us in the second verse that you, just like me, have attained a precious human rebirth, and yours, just like mine, came about in dependence on causes. And those causes are ethics, generosity, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, and prayer. You accumulated those causes in lives previous to this, and now you are enjoying that result. Recognizing this, put it to good use. Don't let this opportunity go to waste. Accumulate those same causes again with the confidence knowing that you can do it because you have done it in lives previous to this. And moreover, develop your motivation for a goal even greater. Develop your motivation to gain liberation from samsara in its entirety. And if you can, develop that motivation to lead others to that same goal as well, to that same liberated state as well. And develop and then accumulate those causes that are required to attain liberation and enlightenment. Developing this determination in your heart is the very meaning of living a meaningful life. And strive to cultivate these virtuous causes every day and each night. Do not deceive yourself. Do not betray yourself. Do not let this excellent opportunity go to waste, but you live this life well. Use this opportunity well.
dine zadang an jigi nyamne jegi dine samda de so ko samli thone jaer ma do sugui thone legal shara ya ba yo marwa ya zadang jo da ma do shin do samda be na an jo shobe ya ji so so ji ya lang sane dine ji so so da shosha ro se we na da ma se we na ju ju de ya an so so ge 직편이야 구로지의 구로유의 구다나 국가의学问的 야고래 이면에 다 소소기 düny야 아니 상계다 장주선바 차사 예 선비 매바제제 아니 매바제 루시 매바제 안데야 소소기 매도로다 뼈로 다시 추 연자로다 가르 부여예베나 니 부여매나 되게 소 삼나려야 근데 유些 풍선 초법에 빠도 매바시우지 예스 매도다 디 베네싱도 리다 되게 rimbochi자 말 빠도 매바 예스 매바제야 상일 부여스 매삼다제 소소기 삼나 두시네 삼매바제 랑이 든데라 초지 개와세다 집어 선배 되게 대바 찌치도 제 얘네 하는 게 들이 예 제가 제티 들이는 파송 중에 샘제라 류가 예수님의 전에 네베 자와 소지의 자와 류가 예수님의 전에 네베 자와서 자와기는 지금에 선배기 두시네 삼시다 도시는 테스틱스 그 감 취시에스 반응스 뒤sel의 파피 소식이 가마지나 생각지나 도시네 삼다데 지금이야 선배기 두시 삼다에 제 얘네기는 안지 소식이 부지 되려야 소식이 부여 유비가 최제 가리나 부여다 이면나 소소 차상 안지 소식이 뢰 삼나라에 매도 다 부여다 되네 신도什么지 빠도 매버 예스 매바진 최제 개와 세대 제발래 부여 선배기 매바지 부여 선배 부여 선배 부여다 매바지 부여래 도시의 진배 안에 되네 안에 셔바세디 좀도 오다 되는 매 시행기 소설이야 네버르다 강을 가르치나 파기 코슬야 파콘랑 메스 미 파파 네베레 코슬 네베렌 유니치메 네렌 유니치메 네베레 유니치메 삼베게 도시는 게 세보금 디세보금이 삼베게 삼단 네버치기메 소설야 가르치는 게 네버치 파라 네버치메 콜랑 네버치기메 삼베 삼다 쇠바체고라 도시는 삼메다 안디네 안지게 소소 어다디링 게 대야고 톱지 대량한 때들이 취 냠내 고급지에 배 야고 중소 다되게 무디지 지기야 되네 고급라고 배 공부래 이래 야고 배 야고래 되게 무디지 냠내 지기야 선배기 되네 두섬 다이디 전체적으로 와 안되네게 삼다체래 차는 안데 마 지게 야소수게 다 마삼셔도 안되는 냠내 지집에 개와사마디 개와 될라되네 안 마오바네 대사모 투비 된 될야 아니 지게 개위신이 남아 却要无送了那么成一点吧，这年那么地点的确许，那这个年们就搞不了，不让我说生别个，我都是呢，的那个给我稍微的那个人给我说什么那么结巴呢？但的呢这个，但的干嘛还是拿到就说个就是了宝贝的什么大山呢？那给我的车上，我就给我推个，给的车上的年们的几个了吧，都是呢，也的。
We all need to sustain our body, but in terms of bringing about lasting happiness, it's really our mind we need to focus on. So you'll recognize that Buddhist training refers to training the mind. This is where the focus on. Sustain the body, but train the mind, put your energy, your attention into your own mind. So a simple meditation I encourage you to do each morning, maybe you can do it in 10 minutes, is when you've woken up and maybe you've had a cup of tea and you're a little alert, you go to your room or a quiet place in your home. Perhaps you have a Buddha image there with an actual statue or just a picture. And you stand there for a moment, feel the presence of their omniscient mind. And when you feel their presence, then you can make some simple offerings. You can put some flowers before the image or light some incense. And you can imagine that you're making a vast, expansive offering. The sky is filled with billowing incense and flowers. And then perhaps sit down or remain standing, whatever is comfortable for you, and make the commitment. Today, I will not harm anyone. I will, at the very least, physically bring no harm to others. I'll make this commitment. And I'll take care with my speech too, not to speak in a way that brings harm to others. And to the extent I can, I'll take care of my mind. That's the training in ethics. When you make this commitment, if an emotional response arises within you, then stop, rest with that. Place your mind with that emotional response. This is important. This is you familiarizing yourself with this ethical commitment. I will not harm others. And then one can move on and move back to that of generosity. And now one's already offered incense and flowers, but one can imagine doing so again and offering other things on a level of imagination. And where one has other capacities, such as skills and talents, make the aspiration. Where I can help others today, I will help them. I will help them with their challenges and difficulties in life. I will give of myself where I can. And again, if there's an emotional response arises, abide with that. Then the third training, that of patience. Here, it can be very useful to think of specific examples, as with other reflections, but certainly with patience. Think about challenges you may experience in the day ahead. Develop the commitment. I will take care of my mind, and I'll try not to respond with anger or frustration or annoyance. And think of situations perhaps where either you are likely to meet someone that you find challenging, or a difficult situation you may be in, and develop the determination. I'll take care of my mind and try and keep my mind spacious and relaxed, and have a loving, caring attitude towards the person I'm with. And the fourth mind is that of enthusiastic perseverance. So here, generate joy at feeling how fortunate you are to have met the Dharma, to have not only met the Dharma, but have sufficient faith in the teachings that you're spending just these few minutes cultivating the Dharma in your heart, and develop the determination. I will continue to do so every morning. And wherever I can, I'll put more time into cultivating the Dharma within. And I will do this for lifetimes until I attain freedom from suffering. And then finally, one makes some prayers, dedicating the virtue accumulated. And one can and should dedicate in a wide number of ways, but specifically in this context, dedicate so that in all future lives, may at a young age come under the direct care of my spiritual teacher. May I recognize him or her as such, recognize him or her as having these extensive qualities, and rely on their guidance, receive their guidance, accept it, rely on it, and strive to cultivate it within. May I do this in each and every life until lasting freedom is attained. So in the way that I've just presented that meditation, it can take you 5-10 minutes, no more than that. If you can do more time, that's fine. But just spend a few minutes every day. In this way, you'll start to develop a habit to engage in meditation on a daily basis.
Ineza semja tamje dewa de temper show, sembege semja semja tamje dewa de tengo, semja dewa de temper show, sembe samsta. Da semja tamje dunga da kugo ma rana shin, dunga kugo ma da rani samma da je, semja tamje dunga kugo ma, semja tamje dunga da jawa show, sembege samma chita. Ine samda ne, semja tamje dunga da jawa da. semjian tamji digi duya de nge nyamnen chi nge tapshi chi nge pano sheli ya pamba jugi semjian tamji dunga de nge segi semjian tamji lagi digi dugi sembege enege sama jikta I dang tsewe chelda da de zang semjian tamji pamba dubala da ngalo nigo mindu ewa zada nigo so de sangi ko sangi du jisang semjian tamji gi digi duya da semjian tamji kanga sege donda dang sangi ko wa ma to ne tab midu jisang semjian tamji gi donda 산여고마 토벌슈 선비게 삼로직 당고 이 다음에 장주 셈 개바세 거죠. 지사다 누시 림바시바듯이 아디니 림바시도네다 셈자 탐제도는 산여고마 토야라야 이 체도에는 류가 있으면 거네 샤는 네베 자와자와 김치기메 세베 나군노 디도네다 지림바 지바듯이나 얘네 말류려죠. 계속 풍소도 제바 치제야 조직 개바세다 제바 풀기 샤리 셈베 벌바지야 풀이다. 얘네게 샤리 짐바 땅이 셈베게 도시 삼 안녕 삼다 얘네 삼다 저질래야 안 지금 강아 강의 세변에 현균 녀바 가르쳐봐다 파 뇌는 균의 지금에 파 폐배 삼마도 파 뇌는 균의 지금에 폐배기 술은 녀바 지금에 파 렌델 폐배 이제 렌치게마도 뇌배 자와 싸우기 지금에 선비게 되네게 삼단의 수업하시 되네게 땅에 심지어 탐지를 산적고 토요일이야 즉 냠내 가르치도 배수의 최시지인 선비 가라 되네 고가브라 배야 고려 선비 네 가라나 지냠내 제야데 준주책으로 안디나신 나 딜레 하바데 중나다 셈제 되네 와주게 예 제지는 미베 띵에서 거미야라 소바 되네 거미야 되네 아니 저게 한너 다음에 봐도 비기 셰럽도 삼바디 예치 못 차고래 진짜 되네가 마주베다 띵에서나 예 띵에서나 다음에 봐도 셰럽 고마도 베네 다데 딥 짐바 추주스바 춘주 너 춘주디게 아니 제 무슨 예투도와 되네게 삼바 되네 삼다 사진 마트윈 마샤로치도 다 소식에 개와 사샤바 디에데 개와 딜레데네 심지어 탐저 코에 동안에 줘야지 상기이 이 심지어 탐저 상기에서 고에 투버기 교교와 쇼세바 마 심지어 탐저기도 상료고 요도 안토비 교교와 쇼세데 교만하게라 이 개와 사바 딜레데네 심지어 탐제 대기리 템바다 심지어 저 동안에 자워 쇼 제기 교교와 쇼세베 되네게 뭐하자바나 다디 디 겨나 디니게 냠네 지샤바나 디 심제 상조 고방 투비시 냠네 지 루시 삼다샤바네 디 삼다디 겨와치마 원디오 고방 토야 원디오 고방 딘델레 튀야고 주야 차상 규셔서 살고래 아나 콜비 동안 타다를 줘야지 탈비 고방 토야기 규사고래 제가 심제 탐제 상조 고방 투비 규사고 디 냠네 루시 냠네 지샤바나 다데시 푸소소바 겨와 차상기 겨와디 예 마음바데 딘주게기 된 탐지 주게기 디네 삼다전 차선 남는지 두고 이까서 두고래 지사도 전 뒤수를 삼다 디네게 네 아주 님네 제야디 예치 못 쳐고래
And in addition to the meditation just described, you can make it into a meditation whereby you accumulate the causes not only for further acts and rebirths, but actually the causes that will lead to enlightenment. So to do so, I'll describe the meditation. It's very similar to what has just been presented, but it's enhanced a bit at the beginning and the end. So one sets up your offerings in the same way, and even if it's very simple, you just have an image of the Buddha, even just a photo, and you place a flower before it or some incense, whatever you are able to set up as an offerings. But then you develop a motivation of recognizing that in the same way that I just want to be happy, so too do all beings. And in the same way that I do not want to experience a single problem, suffering, or difficulty, nor does any being. So on a fundamental basis, we are all exactly the same. All other differences, for example, in terms of personality and gender and so forth, these are superficial. The fundamental basis, we are all the same. So in the same way that I want to be free of suffering and I don't want others to harm me, I am going to help others gain freedom from suffering, and I will not harm them either directly or indirectly. But to be able to really help others to attain the same state that I long for, a state freed of suffering, I have to become the most skilled of guides. I have to become a Buddha. So therefore, I commit to training to become a Buddha for the sake of others. I commit to training to become a Buddha so that I can guide others to attain a state freed of suffering. So there we generate our motivation. And then one engages in the meditation as described. One starts with ethics, developing the determination. I will not harm any being. I recognize that they, like me, do not want to be harmed physically or spoken to in an unkind manner, or even thought of in a bad way. Therefore, I commit to not physically acting in a way that will bring harm to others, or trying not to speak in a way that will bring harm to others, and doing what I can to restrain my mind from thinking unkind thoughts. And secondly, in terms of generosity, I will give of myself to others in order to ease their suffering wherever I have a skill or a talent or a capacity or material resources. Wherever I have abundance in this way, I will use it to benefit others. to ease their suffering, to bring them happiness. The third training, that of patience, that these other people whom I recognize as being of wanting happiness, just like I do, I will care for them. And when I will care for them, not only when they are interacting with me in a way that I like, but I'll care for them in their times of greatest need, when their mind is most disturbed, even if they are taking it out on me or a loved one of mine. I will care for others. I'll treat them with kindness and respect and dignity, no matter how disturbed their mind is. I will keep my mind at peace and respond with kindness, care, and wisdom. So this way we train in patience. Then one generates joy at this opportunity, recognizing that it's through engaging in this meditation and then living out one's day under the influence of this meditation that one is making a meaningful impact on others, as well as spiritually developing. And one commits here to persevere in this training, to continue, to not do so sporadically or only when one has an abundance of free time, but make this a central component to one's life. And then there are the additional trainings of concentration and wisdom. And if thus far, whenever you feel the mind of ethics or generosity or patience or joyous perseverance arising within you, if you rest with that, this is starting to develop your concentration. And wisdom is also an indispensable training, but we'll come to that later. And then one ends with prayer or dedication, where here the dedication is similar to before, but one includes that the reason for wanting ongoing excellent rebirths and to be under the care of one's spiritual teacher so that one can develop spiritually into a Buddha for the sake of others. And one has as its one sincere commitment the wish for ongoing good rebirths, to be under the ongoing care of one's spiritual teachers and to make ongoing efforts in the Dharma in order to be a real meaningful impact on the lives of others. So this then is how to do that same meditation in an enhanced manner and thereby create the causes for not only ongoing excellent rebirths, but to attain enlightenment itself.
Denige dusine samdayadi azu ishogetiwa tambene ni ngodiwa ya jiga tuwa pasu chamjamde de kabya jiginga de de den de kosumsejiliya dushe tokto samdaje susutünliya anchojiga waseda jiba yus meba samdaje andeshi samdade jimba dusine sosu gang tutuchi samdaje bene ene ko tum chaura jaza ani yenjimiji da jige 강바에 부이다고 다 곰 참가해서 그거 말 중에 야고 마주베네 그거 가와이네 뭐 봐서 캠여르데 이땡에서 개비 갑니 아두시네 삼다다예도 아니 지메도도 말다 캠여도 디와제 신도다 메도 인주베 디스차사는 데리게 삼다지 디스메도디 계셔서 야 디스차사 추리게 왔을때 볼 그위에서 삼다지 도시베네 아니 지게 삼다만 데리게 엔닝고 뒤에 가네가데시 여베나 뒤에 밥에 소소 가래 데니 됐었지 tun다 야고 책으로 아니 안지 가브리엘이야 직 전화오는 니모 호와다 디데시베나 이 검션에 되는 배 야고 책으로 와치자 데니게 책으로
What I've just described is a brief meditation, simple and easy to do, and quick meditation. So this word meditation, it has the particular context of being seated in a particular posture in a very quiet environment. And this is very useful to engage in meditation. But this word actually means habituation or familiarization. So you heard from our first talk this morning that the very meaning of Buddhist practice is to train one's mind. And so training one's mind means developing habituation to wholesome ways of thinking, virtuous ways of thinking, and breaking our habituation to unwholesome or non-virtuous ways of thinking. So this is the process of meditation, is developing virtuous habituations and breaking non-virtuous habituations. And it is a mental process because we're training our mind. And whatever we do, whether we are sitting quietly like now, or we're going about at the busy activities of our life, our mind is involved, our mind is present. which means we have the opportunity to train our mind in any circumstance. We have the opportunity to develop habituations to virtuous ways of thinking in each and every opportunity, not solely when we're sitting in a particular posture without sound and distraction around us. So I encourage you to take this final point to heart. Formal meditation is indispensable to develop our habituation to wholesome minds, but so too is taking this way of thinking into our daily life. So at first, take it to where you have quiet moments alone. And this could be whilst you're doing tasks, but it's a task that for you is very repetitive. You've done it many times. You do not need to be conscious or attentive to what you are doing. Then recall the meditation and do the whole thing or parts of it again. And even if it's just a few seconds, but many times in the day, this strengthens your habituation. Then the habituation to wholesome minds comes about very quickly. And through that, then, for example, as you're driving to work, you'll see someone's garden and you'll recognize the flowers are in bloom, and spontaneously you'll offer these to the Buddhas. When you encounter challenging circumstances, spontaneously you recall your training of ethics and your training of patience, and you'll commit to responding in a skillful manner. So by taking your formal meditation or development of habituation and taking that to the quieter times in your day, you'll quickly develop your habituations, and your spiritual training will bear fruit quickly.
Bendigo samdade jit number nal roya da ji mewa nal roya de Bendigo samdana ju Bendigo Geshe mo samdayo ko hobya ko ro ya so mora ta bi kam de samdane madane ya yo de samda ji mora ya dona ma de tabya ge de ya ji mo ji de di samda mora shanda tan ge ko so yablo de de ne de ta samdana di ro ba so ge da mora ta bi kam de samdaya ji namen sure che samda dine samda de ni lamga de ta ji ba de yang a hu.
So for those who are fortunate enough to travel to work by bus or train or tram, you have plenty of time on your commute to sit quietly and do this meditation. Because all that goes on around you, other than your particular stop, the rest of it is not particularly important. And you can engage in this reflection again and again. But for those of you who drive here and there, drive to work and elsewhere, then perhaps take more care, rather be attentive to your driving. But if you stopped at a traffic light, instead of being frustrated thinking about whether you'll get to your destination on time, return to your meditation. And then when the light changes, go back to being aware of your route and being aware of the traffic around you. But in this way, you'll find there are many quiet moments in the day where you are doing things that require no particular attention. Then take your mind back to what you are meditating on. So thank you then. We'll conclude there for this afternoon. Thank you.